Hi. Always read the rules is my number one sweepstakes tip, and my guest will help you understand why. You are tuned in to With the Contest Queen, where the winning begins, with myself, Carolyn Willman, and I have Veronica Ramirez, Esquire, or Curator Council, as she's also known as my guest. And remember, all the additional resources we talk about on the show will be added to the show description. Thank you for being my guest today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so glad that we connected. This is, basically the magic of social media happening in real
Yes,
time.
found her on TikTok. I love my TikTok. Now, let me read you her bio, because this is quite impressive. And this is after I saw a bunch of your videos, I'm like, I have to have her on as a guest. So Veronica Ramirez is a creator attorney. Now, this is important because we are entering so many social media sweepstakes. She works with the other side. And she's a small business owner. And she's a reality competition show junkie, which ties into the sweepstaking because, it's all competition.
Yeah.
Because they win prizes.
Mm-hmm.
Combining her passions for law and entrepreneurship to empower talented creators.
Oh, yeah.
Now, she's close to us, or she was when she went to school. After earning her law degree from Syracuse, Veronica worked for several years as a commercial litigator representing small and large corporate clients. Time and time again, she witnessed the power and importance of having an attorney who just gets it in your corner. Yes, it's very important to hire the type of attorney for the job you want. Don't go get your Uncle Fred, who, wrote Grandma's will, to do your contest rules. He doesn't know that law, or the real estate lawyer, or there's different types. Eventually, she left the corporate world to start Curator Council, which I love this brand name.
Thank you.
That's the marketer in me, because she saw a Veronica-sized gap. Oh my God, I love it. In the market, countless creators now thrive through her signature suite of practical, dare I say, fun, and we love fun here, legal services designed to give her clients a rock-solid foundation they need to dream bigger. And it's so important when small businesses want to run giveaways that they have their rules locked tight. So I always tell sweepstakers, my number one tip is always read the rules. But as a marketer, my number one tip is have your rules locked tight.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, when you're going into something as, I think, lighthearted as a giveaway, a contest, as a creator, or even as a business, there are ground rules, right? There are always going to be ground rules about what it takes to be eligible, what it takes to, have a valid submission and all of those things. But it's also worth noting that because there are ground rules, there's a contract. And because there's a contract, you have to make sure that that contract is clear. It's clear, it is concise, it's easy for people to spot and refer to, and it's easy for people to understand what it takes to participate meaningfully, and also to just know, like, what are they giving? What are they getting? When is everything going to happen? All of those details need to be found somewhere, and that has to happen in your terms and conditions.
Yeah, I like it when they break out the really concise and clear short rules.
Oh my God, yeah, me too.
So you don't have to skim the whole crazy document, because sometimes you miss stuff. And I know companies, because I worked at an agency, and they're notorious for reusing rules. And then, because they do the same contest every year, so why don't we just update the dates? And then sometimes they forget a bit, because the rules can be long.
Oh yeah. And listen, I am no stranger to those terms and conditions. They are sometimes a snooze, especially when you're thinking about what it is that you're looking for as a participant, right? As a person that wants to participate in these contests. You're just like, all I want to know is, what does it take for me to win, right? Like, how do I win, right? Those are the meat and the meat and potatoes, right? But as a lawyer, there are other things that, of course, we have to kind of put in, because somewhere in history or in time, there was some sort of dispute that, because it wasn't there, now we got to put it in. to protect our clients, to protect the business and all that fun stuff. So that's why you see some things that you're like I really didn't want to know about this as a participant, but as a lawyer, you're like, oh, thank God they have a limitation of liability clause, or okay, thank God we know how the dispute's going to be resolved, that there is some sort of like dispute, like what is the mechanism, when can they file a claim? All those things are things that are like, again, that kind of add to like the snore fest that is terms and conditions in these contests.
Yeah, sometimes people get upset with the rules or they don't understand them. And that's why it's important to learn to know what you're looking for. And that's why I said I really like the short rules, because that pulls out the kind of the meat and potatoes. It makes it so easy. Now, the reason I met you is because we were on TikTok, and social media giveaways have taken off. I remember when I just had Facebook, and then I had Facebook and Twitter, and then I had Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and then YouTube. I don't know. YouTube came in somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I don't even remember when, but there's not really many giveaways on YouTube compared to the other channels. I've seen some, but not to the volume.
Right.
And now, we had Snapchat for a hot minute for giveaways, but I think companies didn't like it because the stuff disappeared, whereas companies like to track and keep things for analytics, and they don't get them that way. But TikTok has had a lot of giveaways. And so let's talk about social media giveaways, because the reason I found you was because there was a large content creator that ran a giveaway that went sideways because she didn't have rules and she did everything wrong. And you would think a creator of that size would have had the sense to find somebody who knows how to run promotions, or reach out, or even post on her own TikTok and say, hey, I want to do a giveaway. Who do you know? She has a big enough following. I'm sure someone would have pointed you in your direction.
I know that I'm not for everyone, right? So there's that, right? But I think that, as a creator, it is worth investing in legal, especially as you grow and you become, somewhat of a big platform, right? Like you have a lot of leverage. There's a lot riding on you whenever it is that you put your stamp on something or put your name on something, right? So it's unclear, whether or not this person did or didn't have a lawyer, but what was apparent was that there was either a miscommunication, or maybe they were using past experience to just say, it should be fine. It's kind of unclear. We don't know. I can only guess, right? But yeah, it was really just disappointing because there was a couple of things that were wrong, right? Because with giveaways, what you don't want this to look like is almost like a lottery, right? Because private lotteries are illegal. Like you can't be doing them.
You need a license to run them. And as long as you have a license from your state or province, because there's a lot of charities that run them. And but they're approved because they've gotten the license and they have the legal paperwork and they do, all their due diligence. So then it's okay. But she didn't do any of that either.
It doesn't look like it. I mean, we don't know, right? We can only guess, right? And that's what it sounds like, or at least it's looking like, because shortly after, I guess, this was revealed online, it was taken down. Like we don't know what happened. We don't even know what happened to the entrants and all of that stuff. But what we do know is that there was a donation. It was supposed to be a fundraiser. And as part of like your submission, I guess, you were expected to make a donation with the understanding that you may win a bag while doing this. And that is a lot of red flags.
Yes.
All of the red flags that you don't want to see in a contest. All of the things that could have been prevented had there been somebody who is familiar with what it takes to run something like a giveaway or a fundraiser of this size. But yeah, and somewhere, and what was also kind of interesting about this, and I caught this after the, fundraiser was taken down, was that there was no terms and conditions. Like we don't even know when or how long anything was supposed to happen. Like there was just a lot of stuff, like a lot of red flags all around with that.
Yeah, because even when I, as a small business, run a small giveaway on my Instagram or something, I have the simplest of rules, absolute bare minimum, but you know who's eligible. You know what you have to do to enter. It's usually like and comment on my post. It's not really
Right.
anything huge.
Yeah.
And like and comment, and then I tell you when it ends, and I tell you, how I'm going to contact you. And then you have so much time to get back to me. Otherwise, I have to pick somebody else. Because when I didn't put that in, sometimes it took me like 2 weeks to get a hold of somebody, and that's not good for business.
Yeah.
And then I just say it's not sponsored by, Facebook or Instagram or whoever, and that's it. And it's pretty clear. I cover my bases, but I'm also giving away small stuff.
Right.
When you're, my budget isn't big, so it's usually books or sometimes swag, a t-shirt, it's worth $20.
Right.
It's not so critical, but when you're holding a mass giveaway where you're giving away thousands of dollars, you need those rules.
Yes, exactly.
What are the biggest problems you see on social besides what we talked, the red flags, like no rules? Obviously, that's got to be your first one, right?
Yeah. I mean, the first one, of course, is no rules. Like there's no clarity about, eligibility, when submissions are going to be accepted, when is, the submission deadline, when should, participants expect to be contacted, and, what is being kind of given in exchange, right? Like what does it take to participate, right? In my world, right, as a lawyer for creators, I'm looking at these contests a little bit differently than you, because you are looking at this from a consumer's perspective of like just anybody who wants to participate. I am looking at this with a very specific lens. I'm looking at how it is that brands are bringing in contests to elicit content from content creators for free, right? There is a lot that is at stake that's a little bit unique to people who are creators, right? Because when you're a creator and your business is to create content in exchange for money, maybe some product, maybe a discount code for your audience, there is a little bit that you're giving up, right? And what's interesting when you're analyzing, or when I'm analyzing these contest rules where they're eliciting something like content in exchange or as a submission for consideration for this prize of either being in like some, commercial, getting a year's worth of free product, etc. I'm looking at what kind of intellectual property rights are at stake here. What does it mean to submit this content that people work so hard to develop and produce? What are they giving away? And in most cases, it's a lot. It's a lot than what you would traditionally bargain for in a brand deal context. A lot of the terms and conditions in those cases are like, hey, you're giving us a perpetual license to use your content however we want, wherever we want, and we can give it to whomever we want. And that, from my perspective, especially because I'm working with and representing creators, not brands, is a little concerning. But of course, I can understand why that language is built in there from the brand side, right? Because they want that flexibility. They want to be able to use it, especially if it's quality content. Like they want to be able to repurpose it and redevelop it and all that stuff. So that to me is always a very interesting thing to see, at least in my niche. But of course, there are other things that you just kind of stumble upon, or stumble across, as you're kind of looking at the rest. So you're just like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Like a year's worth really means X amount of product, or, the value of the product is X. So you're like, oh, so it's really not as much as I thought it was. That kind of stuff is very interesting, because you also have to be mindful of the laws that apply, right? Kind of making me segue into that. State laws kind of have different requirements about the value of prizes and what needs to be put in place to, I guess, protect the value of that. In New York, if it's like, I think over like 50 grand, you have to have a bond, right? So that's something that, you know, conveniently might be something we'll see. Like the value of prizes may not be as high because they're probably worrying or avoiding, you know, additional like legal requirements that have to be met in different jurisdictions.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because when you were reminding me of that, it struck me as we're kind of almost going backwards in the sweepstakes community. Because if you look at the history of sweepstakes, it was actually contests. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, what was big was contests. And so if you've seen the movie The Prize Winner of Defines Ohio or read the book, it was you were to finish this jingle in 25 words or less. And the companies would then judge them and then award winners prizes of whatever it was. And then they would turn around and use that as their next jingle or slogan or ad campaign. So it got known as like CGM, consumer generated media. And it's kind of come back to that because then they're like, hey, enter to win a $25,000 check. Take a picture with our product or a video and post it on social.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's come full circle. But now it's not come up with a jingle. It's now a picture or video for that. And I thought that's interesting that it's come full circle. But yeah, I've heard of those nightmare clauses where, you know, if you have a viral video of, you know, some cat or something, there's certain websites that like to share a lot of viral videos. And if they'll come to you and say, hey, can we use that video? And if you sign the contract, you've signed away all of your videos to them, not just that one that they liked. Yeah. So you have to also advocate for yourself. First, read the contract yourself, as dry as it may be. And second, then turn around and have a lawyer read it. Because now you've marked out your concerns and you can say, hey, here's this contract. Here's what I'm fuzzy on. Here's what I don't like. Here's what needs to change. And then you could have somebody look at it.
Yeah.
And you can change contracts. People don't know that. They think, oh, well, the company sent me this. I have to sign that. No, you don't.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I am the queen of pushing back on these like artificial deadlines, right? Queen to queen. I am the queen of pushing back those artificial deadlines that people set. It's very interesting to kind of be looped in on a chain that says, hey, sign this by end of day. And you just gave it to us like 2:00 that day. I'm not one to say, okay, well, I have to like drop everything in my life to make sure that this is signed by end of day. I'm like, yeah, thanks so much for this contract. We will get back to you with our changes. Like I'm not indulging that. And nobody should, right? I mean, really, nobody should. And it's a red flag if it is, you know, if that's the case. In my view, it's a better sign when brands are just more receptive to, okay, yeah, understood. Most people aren't represented, so maybe they're not expecting a lot of pushback. But if there is any pushback, whether you want to make the change or you want to loop in an attorney to make the change and the brand is resistant as a creator, that's a red flag for a creator. That is a big red flag. If the brand is not receptive to making those changes or is pretty like set on this is the contract, take it or leave it, then maybe you got to reevaluate and decide whether or not that partnership is worth pursuing, especially if you can't come in and negotiate a contract that's fair. So yeah, that's my tip.
Yeah, because some of my viewers, I mean, yeah, we're all contesters, but some are small business owners and some are creators like myself. And some, you know, might have a viral video because, you know, we all do crazy fun things.
Right.
So it's good to know these things to protect yourself, not just in the sweepstakes world. But do you have any tips on how, like, we've already talked about some of the red flags, like the obvious one, no rules. Yeah, that's kind of a big one.
Why?
But are there any other things that you've seen that would be a red flag?
Yeah.
As I think there's a line between people that are running a scam and small business owners that just don't have a clue as to what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that for the most, I like to think, and maybe I'm an optimist, right, for saying this, or maybe I'm a little naive for saying this, but in my heart of hearts, I think that if people are running a giveaway, they have the best intentions. Especially when I'm seeing this on the creator side, like, you know, maybe they're doing this as like a thank you to followers. So it's just like, because it's a thank you, like they're kind of just like, what's the worst that could happen, which is like the worst thing. Those are the famous last words that you should be saying, that you would be saying as a creator if you're doing that, right, and running these contests, right. But I think that it's really important for participants, for contesters, sweepstakers. I know that there was a video that you had about like how different countries refer to themselves that do this and stuff as a hobby. But whatever you call yourself, if you want to participate in this, I think it's helpful or very important to understand where the information is coming from, right? Yeah. If this is like a channel that, or it can trust that this is like the person, the creator themselves, like putting themselves out there, running the contest, all of these things, you may even see it on other channels, like that contest being syndicated and on their other platforms. Like that should suggest that this is like a legit thing that's happening on somebody's account, right? A lot of problems can happen, especially at the larger the creator is, or even brand, is that there are a lot of spam accounts that will kind of spawn as a result.
They're so bad.
Yeah. And that, is a sign for people, for brands, for creators to put in that meat and potatoes, description.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
That this is how I'm going to reach you. This is the only way I'm going to reach you. Right. So make sure you have valid contact information, whatever that is, or that you make your profile available so that I can reach out to you. Because maybe if you're on private, then you can't message people or whatever. But I think being very clear and deliberate about how it is that you're going to be reaching people is super important, because there are so many of these spam accounts that
they're
happen.
Horrible. And they do try to message you. Like you'll find them in your hidden messages. Mm-hmm. And what I notice, and this is a good tip for people to know the difference. If you see a legitimate contest from a brand that you recognize, or a curate content creator that you're like, oh, I love their stuff because she's always doing recipes or whatever. And she's holding a giveaway because some big food brand has reached out to her and they've partnered up. You see them and immediately almost the same brand, like they'll snag their picture and they'll make it, but with like a dot or a dash or a double letter or something. And you think, oh, then they notify you that you've won. Mm-hmm. And then of course they want money. That's a red flag. And it's really insidious. Like I've noticed it literally, it must be bots that set up, because I've noticed it when I enter, literally seconds after I enter, boom, I get a new follower from the spam account.
Yeah. It's like influx of just random, iterations of like the same account, like the same contest like holder. And I mean, that's also why it's important to identify who it is that's hosting the giveaway, so that you can, as a consumer, be able to say, okay, this is the person that's responsible for hosting this. I can look to their website to verify that this is happening, on their, platforms and stuff like that. If there isn't even that, then it's even harder to discern and harder to confirm as a consumer about whether or not this is a legitimate thing. I think that's also important to have.
Yeah, you can kind of tell. You get good after a while. You'll click on it. I go to their main page. I see a blue check mark most of the time. They've taken the time to get those blue check marks. Even if they haven't got it yet, if it's a big brand, they're going to have lots of followers and lots of posts and lots of engagement. Like, and you can start to tell, and it will never be private. Yeah, I don't know what we can do to stop sweepstakes scams, because it feels like a whack-a-mole game. And
Yeah.
sometimes I've reported them, and or even people that have like spoofed my accounts, and they'll go, and whoever I report them to says, "Oh, that account's fine." I'm like, how is this account fine? They're not fine.
Yeah, it's super disappointing, right? You know, as a consumer, as a business owner, and as somebody that's just trying to protect their name, right, from, you know, getting dragged through the mud by these like robots and scammers and all that stuff. It's like you're doing your best, you're doing your due diligence, and then you get these automated responses. I, you know, I don't know what will change, because I feel like this is a function of like automations that are happening in a lot of these like social platforms. Like they're not necessarily adding like that personal touch of like having somebody look at it. Cause I feel like, in what world could you look at these like spam, like clearly like spam, like bot created accounts that are made just a day after this, you know, contest was live? Like, in what world can you say that that's like not a legitimate, like how could you say that
Yeah,
that's legitimate?
I don't understand. This is where we need people back and not AI.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of learning to be done with that, and I don't know what that will take, because I'm not by any means a specialist in that way, but it just seems like that's the biggest hiccup with it. It's just like this, you know, glitch.
Okay, so if we find a contest, because I love doing the social media ones where, you know, I did one the other day. I was at my gym, and they were having their celebration of their 44th anniversary.
Mhm.
So if you signed up for a class, you got an entry, and it was a physical old fashioned. I filled out an entry blank and I put it in a box. Like,
Wow.
I haven't done that forever. And then on the sign it said, if you take a picture of yourself and put it on Instagram with tag us. Of course, I took one, but I made sure no one was in the background because I don't want anybody's privacy at the gym. But I was super sweaty after the hot yoga. I'm like, oh, this will be a good entry. And I wanted it so you could tell I was at the gym, but no one in the background. So that was kind of a little random. But I did that, and I thought, oh, that's fun. You know, plus it puts stuff on your page, which is good. I tell people to always have just a sweepstakes account, like, because people say, oh, I don't want all my family and friends to be seeing all these weird pictures, you know, the stuff you do to enter contests. Like, oh, here's my coffee because I'm entering the coffee contest, or me sweaty at the gym because I entered the gym contest, or whatever. I tell people, set up an account just for entering the sweepstakes.
That's smart. That is so smart.
So have your personal one where you put your kids and your family and you keep it private. And then have a public one with all your weird ass sweepstakes pictures, because you don't care.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you have to make sure you up your privacy settings, because mine got hacked. This is important. You should always, I discovered this the hard way. Just always check every time there's a program update, like if they update the app or something, to go back and check your security settings to make sure that they're still valid, because sometimes they add in things and then toggles get switched, and some very not pleasant things were posting on my Facebook page.
Oh no.
Because the tagging had been changed when the security settings were updated, you know, because they're always updating these programs, which is good because we want them to stay current.
Right.
However, you should always keep, once in a while, maybe once every few months, go back and check that all your settings are the same and they haven't been updated and accidentally toggled on or off. So I had to up the security. So you got to watch that.
Ooh, yeah, that's a great
tip.
Password.
I change my password about once a month on some of the socials, because I know so many people, but they duplicate accounts too. I don't know how to. So if I'm going to enter on a sweepstakes, if I'm submitting something, like if I'm submitting, you know, my little sweaty picture or whatever I'm doing, so I see a contest and I think, what should I be looking for that's not in the normal, would be in the normal rules where I'm just filling out name, address, phone number kind of thing? What are the things? Yeah, a lot. Get your pens and pencils ready. Your pen and paper ready, people.
Yeah, I think there's a few things, right? Especially when you're submitting something like your likeness, right? You're submitting content. You know, that is the perfect opportunity to look at rights and usage, intellectual property rights, whatever the label is, right? Our rights in your content. By submitting your content, you hereby give, you know, contest holder X license and all these things. You need to analyze that language and feel like, okay, am I comfortable with that? That at this point, you know, when you're in a contest setting, it's, you know, you don't really have a ton of leverage, right? To kind of come in and say, I object, right? And I'm going to change this contract and all this stuff. You just can't. It's just the terms are what the terms are. So by doing and participating and submitting, you know, the submissions that are compliant with their rules, you're basically saying, I agree to the licensing language or the intellectual property language that's involved. Now, there's a couple of variations that you'll see in the terms and conditions of these contest rules. You may see something like, you hereby give all rights, title, and interest in the submission, right? And you give all, you know, basically this very flexible license in being able to use your likeness, and that you basically are waiving any claims to, you know, against the brand or the contest holder, whoever that is, for their use, right? Whatever use they make, like, you are not going to be able to file a claim against them for that, because of the language that's contained in these like terms and conditions. So there's, you know, something like, you hereby give all the rights. You maybe aren't giving them rights, title, and interest, but you may be giving them a license, but that license is very broad in scope and also gives the brand the ability to sub-license, which means you basically the brand can basically give another company rights to use your content, your likeness, however they see fit. And those are basically the two, I think, most popular versions of that particular section. You know, with that, and I kind of insinuated this a little bit, is about, you know, claims, whether or not you're waiving or releasing the brand from any claims. And it's relevant because if you, let's say, are giving them a license and maybe they're in some way, maybe by the grace of God, they limited the way that they can use your content. It's important to see, well, what can I, you know, what rights do I have if I have a problem with how this has been handled, right? My image has been handled. Do I have to be mindful of where I can file a claim? Do I have to be mindful about when I can file a claim? Because even though there might be statutes of limitation that are, you know, relevant to where you live or where the contest is situated, the contest terms and conditions can also modify that, right? They can shorten your time significantly, right? They can say you have a year or you have a month. You know, it just depends on what the terms say. But that's another thing to be mindful of as well, especially if you're thinking about, you know, what are you getting in exchange as a creator. The other thing to also, you know, be mindful of, you know, when you are a creator and you're deciding that maybe this is my big break, maybe this is where I can make an impression on the brand, right? Is, you know, also just be mindful about the exchange, right? Like, is this value? Like, is there value? Is there alignment? All of these things. If you look at these terms, right, knowing that the licensing language is very broad, knowing that you don't really have any leg to stand on in a legal proceeding because they may they may release everything from, you know, release liability from anything, any claims about this, then you have to make that call. You have to make that judgment call. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, period, because maybe there is like something to be said about doing it and getting your name out there. But yeah, I think that those are like the two biggest provisions to think about that are like outside of like the traditional eligibility and deadlines and all that fun stuff.
Well, I think it is worth it because a lot of these ones, there's something called barriers to entry. And the more barriers to entry there are, the less people are going to enter. So if you have to jump through a lot of hoops to create a video, less people are going to enter and you can win big. Like one of my sweepstakes friends last summer, there was a video contest on TikTok and the prize was $10,000. And after a club meeting, she stayed on the video with me and we talked about it. I'm like, you have to enter. Nobody's going to be entering this. Like, you have to enter. She hummed and she hawed and she tried and she learned and she had to use the filter and she had the product and she had to show that she was fit. Like, she became a fitness buff and it was a fitness water. So she tied right into the brand.
Wow.
And so she did it and she took over and over again and she finally got it and she submitted it and she won. Now, I didn't read the rules. I don't know if they used her likeness, but to her, it was absolutely worth her
exactly
that chance because she got a big check. And I did one the first summer that I got on TikTok. And I was playing around and I had a business account and I was entering some sweepstakes in my business account. And I discovered, no, that's not going to work. So I made a personal account and sure enough, I started winning that way. And I did a TikTok and I won $1,000 in gift cards. So I think it is worth to try and do the likeness ones. You have to be cognizant, they're the ones that we both did are big corporations that are less likely to abuse the image power than say maybe a smaller business.
And
we're not, maybe not.
No. The thing is, I was actually I had a thought that was related to the small business thing. And that is that, there is a lot of, there's a bit of a knowledge gap, with smaller businesses about like what rights they have to content that's, referencing them, tagging them, or is like a, result of something like a giveaway, right? Because sometimes they don't have rules, right, that say like what rights they do obtain, right? So then you default to like, what's the standard rules of operation here, copyright law, right? Or did we get a some sort of licensing agreement? Did we get some sort of permission from this person to reshare all this stuff? Usually the answer is no, because there is that knowledge gap, right? So not only in the contest context are we seeing like there's maybe a little bit of confusion around like what's, out of bounds, right? Because maybe they don't have those terms and conditions, but also just in the day-to-day sharing of content and seeing customers, interact with their product and service and seeing, oh, wow, that's such a great photo. Like, I'm going to put it on my feed. I'm going to slap it on an ad. And you know what? Like they should be so happy that they are on our ads.
I've seen that. I've seen videos, like YouTube videos of how big brands had stolen small creators' work and either copied it and sold it in stores or used their content like from Instagram, like in their ads.
Oh, yeah.
And they just basically took it and they're like, yep, I had to get a lawyer involved and we had to go chasing them because no. They can use my work if I get paid for it.
Right. And yeah. And that's, that's another thing that's like a very, like, it's like a distinguishing characteristic, I think, with people who aren't making a living creating content and just, a casual person that just wants to participate and like win big and like, why not shoot my shot and make it happen. They have other like means or, other resources or other sources of income that it's almost like it's okay that they put my picture that I posted online on their social media. It doesn't affect them as much. But in the creator, economy, it's like, that's money. That's lost money. Yeah. And because of that, there are other consequences that I think small businesses aren't really aware of, particularly when you have a creator that maybe, let's just say, we'll talk about a restaurant because restaurants kind of do this a little bit. You have a food content creator who's known for working with, other restaurants on a paid basis, right? And part of that may require something like an exclusivity provision or something like a non-compete where they're prohibited from not only being paid to endorse these like, other competitors, but also just being featured in ads, right, for a period of time while they're working with this competing brand. And lo and behold, this small business who was a named competitor comes out of the woodwork and starts using this creator's photo, image, and likeness while this other, contract is happening. And now that puts a creator in a compromising position. And I don't think a lot of businesses like understand or appreciate that, unfortunately, just because for the most part, again, their use may to them seem pretty nominal or kind of like inconsequential. But for the creator, it's like this has a significant impact on my business. Like brands may not want to work with me or may not want to pay me because of something that's out of my control, like somebody reposting my work in an ad without asking me.
Yeah, it's nice when the ad is part of the prize. One of my fellow sweepers won a check and a trip to New York, and the winning picture of their dog was put on a billboard in Times Square.
Oh wow, that is so
that's why they got the trip to New York, so they could be in Times Square and they could see it.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So sometimes brands are clever in their use of the advertisement because it was in Times Square. It was huge. Everyone saw it.
Right.
That he won the picture of the dog. So cute. Yes. Who doesn't love dogs?
Yes.
And they used it as part of the promotion, as part of the prize. And of course, who's going to say no to a trip to New York to go see themselves in Times Square?
Who? Like who? And if not, like, you want to take me with you? Like, what?
Yeah,
I would of course want to, do something like that.
So now we have some other types of legal questions that I'm sure you can answer. Okay, so let me just go through here. First, back to our Instagram. Always double check the spelling and check with the accounts I follow. So yes, always double check.
Yes, definitely. Good tip.
Okay, I'll answer that one later. It's about a phone. Okay. Well, actually, we'll do it now. Will sweepstakes companies leave you a voicemail message if you don't answer your phone when they call or choose a new winner? Ooh. It depends on the rules. Right?
Yeah.
My daughter entered a radio contest and you text in, and if they call you back and you pick up, you win. If she didn't pick up, she wouldn't have won. She had to answer. But other ones, I've won tickets to things and we'll get a voicemail. Hey, it's so-and-so from such or such a radio station. You won tickets to such and such. We'll send you an email, and they leave you a voicemail. So it depends on the rules.
Yep. And it also depends on how clear those rules are, because, that's the other thing that's tough is that sometimes it's like, yeah, we'll notify you by email. And like, that's all you see. And then you're like, okay, but what if you can't get me by email? Like, what's the other way? Like, is there an alternative way?
Sometimes there's not.
Right.
Sometimes the rules are just like, we'll email you like twice. And if you don't answer. Now here's an interesting one, because we have some sweepers that live far. One of my sweeping buddies lives in Alaska.
Oh.
And so many sweepstakes exclude Alaska and Hawaii. Now, I can understand it if, the contest is for kitchen appliances and shipping to Alaska and Hawaii is like crazy compared to the continental US. Yeah. Okay, I get that part. But if it's a check, do you know why some companies would still exclude Alaska and Hawaii? Because clearly shipping isn't an issue.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I'm not sure. I'm licensed in New York, so it's like, I kind of have like a, general sense of like how this works and all that, but I'm not sure if there's like maybe additional requirements that are unique to both those states, but maybe it's almost like do you think it might be a function of that copy and paste mentality?
Oh,
I think that might be it.
You know what? That might be it. Yeah, because I get it if it's something, if shipping is prohibitive, or even if it's a trip and the airfare is prohibitive. You're going to Italy, it's going to be far more expensive to fly somebody from Alaska or Hawaii than say LA to Rome. So I get that part, but a check, I mean, that's still a postage stamp.
Yes.
Or even, even tracked, it's still not that expensive.
Yeah, I am not sure, but something tells me, especially because of our conversation I think we had before we went live, was just about how, and I think even during this conversation, it's kind of all a blur because I'm so excited. But one of the things that we talked about maybe earlier, if you just start tuning in and all that fun stuff, is that we talked about how some companies get into the habit, and it's not really the best habit, of copying and pasting terms and conditions from prior giveaways or sweepstakes, and it just becomes this like cycle of like, okay, we're just going to reuse it, we're just going to copy paste, make the little changes, and then it's all good. And that doesn't work all the time, and this might be one of those things where that's probably what happened.
That's probably what happens. Yeah, because they, rules are, depending on the company and their budget, rules can be expensive. But to copy paste I'm thinking that might be it. Okay, so here's this is a comment. I try and read the rules every time, but sometimes, oops, I know it'll bite me eventually. Yeah, if you skim the rules. Now, Veronica doesn't know this story. I know you need to read the rules, because one time I skimmed the rules and I missed the clause that said, to win the grand prize, you have to sumo wrestle somebody. So I won the prize of the silver grandstand passes for the race because I call him my husband. He loved car racing, still does. And so I won him to the Molson Indy when they had the car race in Toronto, downtown Toronto, silver grandstand passes. So it was an excellent prize. But on the Saturday, I ended up having to go down to the infield and sumo wrestle someone for the grand prize of lunch with Bret the Hitman Hart. And 4 people were picked. I somehow missed this. And then 2 people didn't show up, and they just took their passes and never showed up. And I thought, that's smart. I should have done that. But I said to myself, I'm the contest queen. I tell people to read the rules. Suck it up, buttercup. Go wrestle. I got smaunched. And so I won, they gave me I got an autograph picture, which I gave to someone who's a Russell fan, but it was 104 degrees and I'm in this big, stinky, sweaty vinyl suit. And it was just, This is how I'm telling people, always read the rules. Don't skim, because yes, it can bite you in the butt or bite you, like knock you over, literally.
Yes. And it's like, even something as like minuscule can like get you out of the running. Like something as simple as like, you have to make sure to say X within a certain amount of time of your video, or like there's
yes, little things like that. Like there's a television station that if you register with them, they call somebody at 8:00 in the morning. If you answer with the winning phrase, you win the money. If you don't answer with the winning phrase, the money goes in the pot for the next person. So some people have won a lot of money by doing that because they get it right and none of the other people did. Here's a good question. Lori asks, so should people in Alaska contest the sponsor and ask them why Alaska is included? If it seems like a strange, I think yes. I would say, why not?
It never hurts to ask. I think if you don't, it's always going to be no if you don't ask. You know what I mean? Like you have to just.
Oh, that's a good, yeah. It's always going to be no if you don't ask. Right. Yeah. If in case of something that seems really obvious that there's no reason they should exclude Alaska, you can understand if the price is super heavy, they don't want to ship it, or it's expensive, like the airfare perhaps is prohibitive and not in their budget from those places. But for a check, there should be no or gift cards or any of that stuff, because it goes in the mail or it can be emailed. It doesn't, sometimes they just email you the e-card. Yeah. It doesn't, there's no reason, or just.
Yeah. I mean, the only
I would ask.
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing is like, maybe they have stricter rules around it. Like maybe those states have stricter rules around that. But I mean, Carolyn, I think you would have probably been like, oh yeah,
It's usually New York, Rhode Island, and Florida that has the tougher rules than like I don't know of any restrictions around sweepstakes for those two states, except for their obvious distance and cost for shipping.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's it. So this has been very good because that's, people need to protect themselves online and be able to look for scams and make sure they always read the rules. And here's somebody posted a comment. Sideshow collectible sweeps has you pay for shipping. I hope this is not a trend that bleeds into other sweeps. Yeah, so what about that? Like, can companies ask you to pay for the shipping of your prize? That seems kind of suspect to me. I never liked that. I'm like, no, thank you. I don't want it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that per se like prohibits a business from doing that, right? Because at that point you won. So I guess it's just a matter of like, how do we facilitate the transfer of the prize? Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I can't really recall like a law or statute that's like, you cannot do that to a consumer. Maybe will require like additional research to be sure, but I can't think of that. I mean, as a policy, I don't think that that's fair. I think that creates in some ways a barrier to even receiving the win. I mean, I have to think about like in terms of like the worst case scenario, right? Let's just say you are awarding this as a company to somebody that doesn't have the means or the resources to even float that payment for shipping and handling. Like, that's got to be really awful, right? To have to like tell them, okay, well, we can't give you your prize. So I don't know that there is a law that says or prohibits them from doing it, but I don't think that that's the best practice.
Yeah.
Especially if you, again, are thinking about what's the worst that can happen, right? That to me would be the worst thing that can happen, because there's just a lot of fallout, a lot of exposure from the, from a brand perspective, that who would want to, who would want to see that front page story? Who would want to see that headline? Like, that's just awful.
I don't understand it. So I'm a small business and I give away prizes. And sometimes I do limit the area because a lot of times if I'm shipping book prizes, I only limit it to Canada and the US, because if I have a winner in the UK, to just ship the book, it's going to be $25 to $30. Right. And I'm like, the book's not even worth $30. The book's $20, and it's going to cost me $1.5. What is that? 150 times the price of the book to ship it.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, can I just send you a Kindle version of it? Like, can I just send you like a digital copy?
That. And sometimes I can't do that depending on the country. So there was one time I gave away Kindle books. I was all excited. I knew this Kindle author. The book was fantastic. She's a fellow sweeper. She wrote a book about a mystery book, which I love. But the protagonist is a sweeper. I'm like, okay, that's cool, right?
That's the perfect book for you. So I
bought it for myself, read it, loved it, said, okay, I have to give some away because I'm just such a fan. And it turns out I couldn't give away Kindle. I could buy them and give them as gifts in the US, but for anybody else that won, like in Canada, I just had to basically send them a $4 Amazon gift card to go get it themselves because I couldn't send it.
Wow, so weird. That is so weird.
So these are the problems you find as a business owner. You're like, oh, I must be able to send a Kindle,
right?
Nope. So then I had to message them and say, guess what I discovered? I'll send you a gift card. You buy it yourself. I'm sorry, I can't send you the price. And they're like, okay. But technically, I sent them $4. They could do whatever they wanted with it. I would just hope they supported the author.
Yeah.
But,
me too.
So sometimes you run into things that don't make any sense at your end. See, Daniel, this is what he said. Most scams require shipping payment and steal your payment info.
Wait, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, most scams require shipping payment, and then they steal your payment info.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would never do that. I've had that happen. Now that you reminded me, Daniel, a long time ago, I had won a pendant that was kind of, they took like pennies and they made them pendants, because we don't have pennies here in Canada anymore. So they took all these old pennies and they made the pendants, and they had something, and you could get your year of birth or something. Like there was a whole tie-in. But then I won the contest and I had to pay shipping, and I'm like, no, I don't pay shipping for prices, so no thank you. And I'm like, I don't want it that bad. I'm not giving you my info. I'm not paying for anything. I'm just gonna, to me, what it was is, the shipping and handling was their way of covering the cost of the item. So they were selling it. Do you understand what I'm doing?
Yes. Yes.
They weren't stealing your info. They were trying to sell a ton of these. And the way they were doing it was giving them away and then just making you pay shipping and handling. But it would actually cover the cost of the item. So they would actually make money at the end. So I didn't see it as a scam. I thought they were doing it to move inventory.
Yeah.
Another kind. Well, it is kind of scammy, but it's just
scammy.
It's skirting the law very closely. Like you're skirting the law, right? You're kind of coming close to the edge. You're not going over to a full-on scam, but you're getting kind of close to the edge there.
Yeah, the value is very interesting. Yeah, especially depending on what the value is. Like that would be a red flag. That would be a huge red flag, because it's like, then this isn't a giveaway. This isn't a contest. Like this is fraudulent, right? And in that case, there are mechanisms that are available, like reporting it to the FTC or reporting it to the Better Business Bureau, at least in the States, right? Like that.
Yeah,
I don't really know about Canada.
It's similar. We have the Competition Bureau. That, and we have in Quebec, they're very strict. If it's open to Quebec, I always tell everybody, report to the Régie, because they don't like this stuff at all.
Really? Yeah, tell me more.
I think it's the Régie d'Alcool, which is alcohol, and prizes at de concours. And forgive my French. Anybody watching that speaks French, don't come at me with hate.
You're trying.
Till I was 2, I was fluent in French, and then I stopped speaking. My mom speaks 7 languages. I speak 1. I used to be fluent in French, and then I decided I wasn't going to speak French. I was a stubborn little kid.
Oh, man.
And now I'm like, dang, I should have kept it up. But anyway. But, yeah. We have the Régie, which may be equivalent to like New York or Rhode Island or Florida. Now, what about reporting to the state attorney general? When would people do that, or that's not a thing to do?
Well, yeah, there's also, consumer protection, kind of like bureaus within or like arms or like departments within the attorney general's office. So that's another, thing to do as well. I think I'm always thinking about, like, I guess the federal authority, right? Because the scale of a lot of these sweepstakes, at least in my world lately, are national in scale, right? So it's almost like, do you go to just one when you can go to everyone? And I guess, maybe you can go to the U.S. attorney and kind of consider that route as well. But yeah, I mean, definitely, especially if you're looking at this from a local level, why not? Why not call that out and make sure that, somebody is paying attention to it at that level? I think that's helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So yeah, also because depending on the size of the company, or if you know where they're located, you could report it to that state.
Right.
That might be an option to say, hey, this is happening in your state. Maybe
what do you do?
Yeah.
Please fix it.
Please fix it. I think we've covered everything. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy. Everyone has to go. I've put it in the description. Please go follow Veronica on Instagram and TikTok. Now, I am biased to TikTok. I'm on TikTok more than I am on Instagram.
I am too. I post way more often there.
I know, it's so fun. And anybody that says it's not for teenagers has not spent any time on TikTok. Anyway, but I've got her handles there. So go check her out, because she's a lot of fun. And Also, you know what happens is next week you're going to have a question. So then you can message her directly. You can put it on one of her videos, or, you know, send her a message, and then she can answer it in another video or a post or something. And she also has a website. I put her website there because if, you know, we're not all just sweepers. So if you're, you know, you have a small business or you create content and you're looking at something and you're not sure, you can go to her for her legal advice, you know, because we need to, because sometimes we don't know the resources that are available to us as a small business. And it's good to know that they don't have to go and, you know, find some lawyer on Wall Street that's going to charge, you know, $1,000 an hour, you know, but somebody that understands the small business and will help them to get to the next level. Because yeah, you have to protect yourself. I call it a cost of doing business.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the glowing endorsement, Carolyn, and thank you so much for inviting me. Like I said, this is like the magic of the internet, the power of the internet, the good that can come out of the internet. It's just really cool to have connected over something that we both can have in common and just have a really fun conversation. So thank you again for having me.
I know, because I found her because of a schmozzle of a sweepstakes. But that's how it works, right? Something that turns left, turned into something right, as we'll say.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, send your questions to her if you come up with something later. And I'm sure, you know, I'll have her back on. And thanks so much for coming. And I will see you guys on my next live stream.